Hi there and welcome to this ultimate guide to the TSA 2022. In this video I'm going to talk you through what the exam is going to be like, and I'll talk you through the key information, dates and deadlines you need to know. So first of all, what is the TSA? Well, it's an admissions test for certain courses at the University of Oxford, and TSA stands for Thinking Skills Assessment. So what this is assessing is your skills in reasoning, in critical thinking, and potentially in writing as well. It's a skills-based test, not a test of your knowledge. So who has to sit the TSA in 2022? Well, if you are applying for experimental psychology, geography, psychology, philosophy and linguistics, PPE, human sciences, then you'll have to sit both section 1 and section 2, and we'll get onto what the sections are in just a minute. And if you are applying to economics and management or history and economics, then you just have to sit section 1. And these are all just for these courses at Oxford. This year no other university is going to require this TSA. In terms of the exam's format, in 2022 the TSA is going to be a paper-based handwritten exam. So if you've been looking at preparation materials and things talking about the TSA in the past couple of years, you might see things referencing the fact it's a computer-based exam, but that's not the case anymore. They're returning to the original handwritten style test. So for section 1, you'll be given a paper booklet with the questions and you will have to fill out your answers on an answer sheet, and for section 2 you'll be handwriting your essay. So let's quickly run through what section 1 and section 2 are. So section 1 is a 90-minute multiple choice paper, and you'll have to answer 50 questions in that time. The questions are split into two types. So some of them are critical thinking questions, which test your ability to understand arguments and your verbal reasoning skills. And the other type of question is problem solving questions. So these will be testing your numerical reasoning ability. Section 2 will be sat immediately after section 1 if you have to do section 2, and this is a 30-minute essay. You'll get a choice of 4 questions and then you'll have 2 sides of A4 to write an essay in response to the question that you choose. The TSA will be taken in person, so you'll have to take it at a test centre. If you're currently a student at a school in the UK, it's quite likely this test centre will be your school. It's a good idea to check nice and early to make sure your school has the capacity to do this, and if they aren't already a TSA test centre, they can start that registration process themselves and be registered in time for you to register for the test. If going down the school route is not possible for you, there are also open test centres across the entire world that you can sit the test at, and if you have a look on the Cambridge Assessment website, which is the company that administers the TSA, they have a tool where you can find the nearest open test centre to you and get in contact with them to register that way. In terms of cost, the TSA itself is free, but potentially if you're sitting it at an open test centre, that test centre might charge you in order to cover their administration costs and running costs for administering the test. So that's just something to keep in mind. But if you're sitting at your school, it's very likely that that will be free, as the test itself has no charge to the centres. It's just about those administration costs, which some centres may charge you and some may not. So you might be wondering how the TSA is going to be scored. So for section 1, you'll start off with a raw score out of 50 because you get 1 mark for each correct answer, and there's 50 questions on the paper. Then these scores will be converted via a statistical algorithm to standardise them across years and to account for the fact that in some years the test might have been slightly more difficult than in other years. So what you'll end up with is a score that will range from around 0 to 100, and in terms of what that score means, 60 is an average score, 70 is comparatively good, and anything 80 or above is said to be exceptional, to give you a rough idea of what you might want to expect from yourself in this exam. In terms of scoring for section 2, that's little bit less clear. So unlike section 1, you probably won't ever hear back about your section 2 score. Instead, the essay will be sent directly to the admissions tutors at Oxford to read and consider along with the rest of your application. And these tutors are likely to have their own way of scoring or marking the essay, and it's very unlikely you'll hear back about this, but potentially they might bring it up in your interview. But don't expect to hear back about how you did in section 2. Everyone will hear back about how they did in section 1. So in terms of finding out your score, this is just for section 1. You will be given some information about how you can access it, and then the scores will all be released on the same day, and I'll get to the dates in just a minute. You'll be able to log onto a website and see your scores for the TSA Section 1 on there. You might be wondering if there's any opportunities to retake the TSA, and unfortunately that's not the case. There is one sitting of the TSA every year, and if you get your score back and you didn't do as well as you'd liked, or if you feel it didn't go very well on the day or anything like that, unfortunately there's no scope to resit it in that year. If you did want to take the TSA again, you'd have to reapply to that course in the next year, resit the TSA at that point. So now let's just run through some key dates that you need to know in terms of making sure you're registered for your TSA in time. So registration will open on the 1st of September, and the 16th of September is a deadline if you need to apply for modified papers for whatever reason. The registration deadline is the 30th of September at 6 p.m. This is also the deadline to apply for access arrangements. Now, it is very important that you try and get your registration in as early as you can, as you don't want to risk potentially delays with your exam centre, meaning your test registration doesn't get through in time, as there's not much room for exceptional circumstances in that case, and if you don't sit the TSA, it's very likely that your application will not be considered in that year. So make sure you get this done as early as you can, and the 30th of September at 6 p.m. is that deadline that you need to keep in mind. In terms of taking the test, you'll sit the test on the 2nd of November, and you'll get the results back on the 11th of January in 2023. It's also important to note that if any of these deadlines fall on a public or national holiday, there's no extension for that, so make sure you register in plenty of time and take account of that if that affects you. You can't reschedule the TSA date, unfortunately. Everyone has to sit it on the same day. If you want to cancel your TSA, you are very unlikely to be considered by that course in this application cycle if you don't sit it. So in terms of cancelling the exam, the only thing you can really do is withdraw your UCAS application to that course at Oxbridge and then not sit the TSA. It's also just worth noting that you can apply for access arrangements if you need them for your TSA. Like I said, if you need any modifications to the paper itself, you need to apply by the 16th of September. If you have any other access arrangements, the deadline for those is the 30th of September. So let your test centre know if you have any requirements when you register. They'll probably ask you for some more details and they'll submit that access request for you. Again, make sure you do this in good time, as the deadlines I've given here are all for your centre and not for you. So if you submit a registration or an access application at 6 p.m. on the 30th of September, your centre might not be able to process it in time and submit it in time, so you might still miss out. So therefore, it's as important to make sure you get all these applications and registrations done as soon as you can. You can register from the 1st of September, so get going on it as soon as you can. So that is our guide to the information you need to know for the TSA in 2022. We also have some other videos explaining more detail about the different sections and how to do well on the exam, so check those out as well.